the things that they knew how to do in a job are no longer in high demand in the labor market. We need to be more flexible. We need to understand that nothing lasts a lifetime these days because everything changes from one day to the next.
X세대, 밀레니얼, MZ세대. 하지만 성공하는 사람들은 바로 이 세대입니다. 세계적 트렌드와 경제 그리고 테크놀로지는 매일 변화를 거듭하고 어제는 정말 필요했던 기술이 오늘은 쓸모없어지는 시대를 사는 우리, 그리고 이 모든 게 누구도 예측하지 못한 그런 갑작스런 변화라고 생각했었지만 정보가 돈보다 중요한 지금 현 시대에 이 변화를 이미 예측했고 또 다가올 변화도 경고하는 한 남자가 있습니다. 그의 이름은 마우로 기엔. 세계에서 최고로 권위 있는 교육기관인 와튼 스쿨의 경제학 교수이자 부학장인 그는 2030 축의 전환이라는 책으로 전 세계적 베스트셀러 작가가 되었고 The Perennials, 멀티제너레이션, 대전환의 시작으로 앞으로 세상이 마주하게 될 글로벌 경제와 트렌드 그리고 또 다른 변화를 예측하며 그걸 이겨내는 세대 Perennial의 탄생과 새로워질 부의 속성을 가르치고 있습니다. 그리고 이번 TP 인터뷰에서는 세계적 언론사가 찾는 석학 마우로 기엔 교수님을 초대해 앞으로 다가올 새로운 물결과 전환의 과정 속 새로운 기회를 잡아 성공하는 새로운 세대 Perennial에 대한 인사이트를 담아봤습니다.
Mauro, I truly appreciate you joining the call. It's such a pleasure to have you on my channel.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. Happy to be here.
So your last book, 2030, was very sensational worldwide. In Korea, a new re-release edition was launched to celebrate the sales of more than 300,000 copies. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Now, with the release of your new book, Perennials, I was blown away after reading this. I also read it in Korean. You've given me a new perspective on life. I noticed that South Korea is frequently mentioned in the Perennials, especially concerning low fertility and population aging. Could we dive deeper into this topic?
Yes, South Korea is, I think, a very successful country in so many ways. The economy is doing great. Your cultural industries, your movie industry, your music is being appreciated all over the world. But at the same time, South Korea is also the world record holder in terms of the lowest fertility rate in the world. And that's, of course, because highly educated women, they prefer to have careers, professional careers, as opposed to having children. And South Korea is also a place that is very, very unique because family structures continue to be really important. In other words, still what we find is that most children who are born, the few children who are born, they are born into married parents, which is not the norm, as you know, in many other parts of the world, including the United States. So South Korea is a very interesting place in which to think about the interplay among generations.
I'm completely resonate with your perspective on what you just shared. The low fertility is a big problem in Korea right now. And also in the Perennials, you empathize the sequential model of life or the 4 stations in life. After reading that argument, I was shocked because you're right, everyone is still living in the old framework. I would love to share that insight with the audience. Could you please revisit the concept?
No, absolutely. So for over 100 years now, we have been living our lives in terms of 4 sequential stages. And that happened because there were 2 very important innovations. One was universal schooling, meaning that everybody should go to school. And the other one was state pensions, state pension system, which in Korea, if you remember, came into being after World War II. So these 2 new programs essentially divided our lives into 4 stages. First we play, then we are required to go to school, maybe university, and then we work, and finally we'll go into retirement. And, you know, the new global economy, information-driven economy now, is not compatible with that model because now we need people to essentially reinvent themselves multiple times. As you know, computers, artificial intelligence are making so much progress that we cannot hope that whatever it is that we learned 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, for example, when I went to school, will be valid for our entire lifetime. So we're going to have to, in other words, go back and forth between work and study multiple times if we want to remain relevant.
It's even more refreshing hearing directly from you, and especially the whatever we learn in school obsolete much faster than ever, right?
Yes, exactly right. And that this is essentially the result of rapid technological change. And you see this in South Korea, for example, which is one of the most advanced countries in the world when it comes to computers and artificial intelligence and mobile phones and all the rest. The key point to understand is that that system, the four stages of life, was created more than 120 years ago for an economy that is very different from the one that we have today. So at the time it made sense because large industrial companies, what they needed was workers who knew a few things and would learn the rest of what they needed to know at work. And then they would spend a long time working for the same company. Probably they didn't like their jobs, but they were nonetheless told, well, if you work hard, at the end you will have your reward, which is going into retirement. So that system is not compatible now with the new global economy that we have.
Yes. Now, I like to explore who the perennials are and understand more about the perennial mindset. Can you share your insight on those concepts?
Yeah, so a perennial is somebody who doesn't think and doesn't act his or her age. In other words, these are people who are not constrained by the age that they have. So they don't have to only play at a certain age in life, only study or learn at a certain age in life, and work or enjoy some kind of downtime according to the prescribed age. So this is, in other words, a mindset that is consistent with what I was saying earlier, which is that we're going to have to be more flexible if we want to be successful in this new global economy. We're going to have to move back and forth between learning and working. We're going to have to find ways of having leisure time in a way that is compatible with our work and learning patterns. And in other words, we don't have to live our lives as a sequential series of compartmentalized stages. That is the idea.
I couldn't agree with you more since we are doing only play, school, and work and retire. And everybody's dream is retirement. But however, in your book, the statistic shows that satisfaction after retirement is not what they expected, right?
Exactly right. Retirement is something that we are told from when we're little, and that is something to aspire to. And retirement is actually very bad. It's very bad for your health, both mental and physical. People get very stressed out because maybe they think that the money that they have saved is not going to be enough. And also people get really bored and they get disconnected from other people. And so retirement is something that may make sense if you have a very physically demanding job. But for most people now who have cognitive jobs, such like yourself or myself, actually continuing working in some capacity, maybe part-time, makes more sense than going into full retirement.
That totally makes sense because after reading your book, as I mentioned, I was shocked because National Pension Plan was built a long time ago, 100 years ago, when the average lifespan was 40-something years. And now, life expectancy, lifespan, health spans soaring globally. But still, we are trying to following the four stations of life, which doesn't make sense.
Exactly right. I mean, one other thing besides the economy and technological change that has essentially transformed everything in the world is that we live much longer than in the past. In fact, if we can say that people in their early 60s are already, making the transition towards retirement. Well, at that point in life, for example, in South Korea, they have another 25 or so years ahead of them on average in terms of life expectancy. And 25 years is a very long period of time. You need a lot of savings if you want to survive that long without an income. And not only that, the other problem is, as I was mentioning earlier, is that you get bored. Retirement has being an oversold idea. It's not the haven that people tell us that it is.
When I read the dark example in the chapter 4, the message was self-explanatory about the importance of lifelong learning and pursuing diverse careers throughout one's lifetime. Could you revisit and share the example again?
Yes, lifelong learning is becoming a very important trend in education. The idea is very simple, which is that when we're seeing so much technological change and also that the economy itself changes very, very quickly, it's impossible to learn today the skills needed for a job that is going to last a lifetime. Because out of necessity, we're going to have to move from one job or one occupation to another, given all of that technological change. So the example of the dart and the target is very simple. It's very, very difficult to hit a target with a dart if you are, let's say, 100 meters away, right? That's what currently we're trying to do. That is to say, we're trying to learn everything that we might need for the rest of our lives, right? It is so much better to break down that distance into, let's say, 3 segments of 30 meters each or 30 years each. And at the end of each of those segments, then we go back to school and we learn new skills, or we refresh the skills that we already have. So that model is so much better than the current system in which we're supposed to learn everything by the time we are 22 years old or 23 years old for people who go to university, by the time we're 18 if you just go to high school. And that is becoming increasingly very, very difficult in this economy that changes so quickly.
I'm completely on the same page with you because in the teenage or 20s, when before they are joining the college, they are forced to choose their lifelong career without trying them. And then once they make the wrong decision, they feel left out. They feel as a failure. However, if we accept the perennial mindset, you can always restart. As you mentioned, when a person 60 years old after retirement, they can pursue another learning for 2 years and then join the new company. 15 years later, they still have a 15 years of experience.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a problem. It's a problem for people in their 50s and their 60s when they see that the things that they knew how to do in a job are no longer in high demand in the labor market, and therefore they feel completely sidelined. But it's also a big problem for younger people. We're asking right now children when they turn 15 or 16 to make up their minds as to what is it that they want to do for the rest of their lives. And the parents tell the children, make a wise decision because it's a decision that you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life. That is now, as I was saying earlier, incompatible with the new economy, with all of this technological change. What we should be telling children is, don't stress out. Think about the next 10 or 20 years, knowing that you will have another opportunity to go back into learning mode.
I totally agree with you. And in your book, you discuss the forthcoming post-generational revolution that will reshape individual lives, companies, economies, and global society. How can we prepare for this shift as a perennial?
Well, I think what we need to do is to develop the perennial mindset. We need to be more flexible. We need to understand that nothing lasts a lifetime these days because everything changes from one day to the next. So therefore, we need to be prepared for that. And in particular, we need to be open to reinventing ourselves. That is to say, we have to be open-minded. If the circumstances change, then we have to change ourselves because it's impossible to adapt unless you change. So the really important implication of all of this, I think, is that it's not just individuals like you and I who need to change. We also need to ask companies, we need to ask governments, and we need to ask educational institutions such as universities to change as well.
I'm fully aligned with the perspective. Before this final question, I understand from your book that perennial don't define themselves by age groups or generations. However, for the sake of practical advice, I would like to briefly touch on age categories one last time. Could you share your advice or best practice on breaking away from the sequential model of life for those aged 1 to 30, 20 to 60, and over 60?
Well, I think young people, what they need to do is think they're going to have to work, but also go back to school several times, that they need to be flexible, that they need to be adaptable, and they need to be willing to reinvent themselves multiple times because technological change and the economy will require that of them. I think people of middle age also need to realize that yes, they may have found a job that they really like, but that job may not be there forever because the economy will change or technology will change. So they need to be also aware of the direction of change and be willing to go back into learning mode. And then finally, for people in their 50s and their 60s, what I would urge them is to reconsider whatever plans they have for retirement and think that the best thing that you can do for your health and for your pocketbook, for your finances, is to continue being engaged, to continue working, even if it's only part-time. It's going to be better for your health and it's going to be better also for your personal finances.
So let me paraphrase a little. So for the 10 to 30s, you suggest prepare the lifelong learning. And then the middle age group will be acknowledged their job is not forever. Don't be afraid of jumping into the new career and learning. And for the retirement age group is a continuing try to escape from their comfort zone and start from small, like having a part-time job, whatever they're interested in, and then start learning about those topics. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Again, I think the basic principle is flexibility and open-mindedness. We need to break with a model that was good for many years, but now I think it's becoming very quickly obsolete and it's making it very difficult for people to adjust.
My real last question is what message you want to deliver the Korean audience who's watching this video right now?
So I love Korea. I've been to the country several times, and I think there's so much to admire in what your country has achieved over the last, let's say, 30 or 40 years. But I think also South Korea is at a crossroads right now. You need to make decisions as to what you want to do in order to be a successful country in the future. You have many challenges. Those challenges are also being faced by other countries in the world, including low fertility, including rapid technological change, and also that young people are not finding the jobs that they were dreaming about. So the only solution to all of this is to reconsider how we're thinking about the labor market, how we're thinking about jobs, and how we're thinking about learning and work in our lives. We need to integrate those things, and we need to be more flexible in terms of knowing that, we don't only play at a certain age, we don't only learn or work at a certain age, that we will need to move back and forth between each of those modes.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights today. It's been a pleasure exploring those profound concepts with you, Mauro.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, and all the best for the new year.
인생을 바라보는 시각을 바꾸면 어떤 일이 벌어질까라는 한 가지 질문을 던지며 시작된 마우로 교수님의 통찰. 그곳엔 과거와 현재를 넘나들며 찾아낸 정확한 수치와 통계로 우리가 너무나도 당연하게 여겼기에 보지 못했던 그 어느 곳보다도 어두운 등잔 밑에 그림자를 비추며 눈앞에 닥친 대전환을 알리는 메시지가 담겨 있었습니다. 그리고 피하기엔 너무나도 가까이 와버린 인구 축소와 고령화, 낮은 출산율, 그리고 준비하기엔 너무나 빠른 속도를 가진 테크놀로지의 발전 속 퍼레니얼이 되어가며 배움과 일을 반복하는 것은 새로운 물결을 주도할 사람들에겐 필연적이라는 생각이 들었습니다. 그리고 전 이번 영상 속 메시지가 배움을 이겨나갈 퍼레니얼들에게 눈앞에 다가온 변화 속 새로운 시대의 주도권과 성공의 확신을 가져다 줬길 바라며 영상을 마칩니다. 터닝포인트였습니다.